First, I'd like to welcome all of our attendees to the Windshire Group's Ask the Expert series, How to Leverage the Digital Revolution in Early Stage Companies, with our special guest from the Court Square Group. My name is Jen Bardsley, and I'll be serving as your moderator for today's webinar. I currently serve as the account manager slash operations manager for the Windshire Group. So I would like to note that the views expressed in this webinar are those of the panelists. It's for informational purposes only. It's not intended as legal or regulatory advice. And to introduce our panelists, we have Dr. James Blackwell, who's president and principal consultant for the Windshire Group, which was founded in 2011. The Windshire Group accelerates development and manufacturing for commercializing therapies and provides quality expertise. Dr. Blackwell has been a leading industry consultant for more than 15 years. And we also have Keith Parent, who is a founder and CEO of Court Square Group. He leads the company and the vision for using IT as a strategic enabler for life science companies from preclinical all the way to manufacturing.
The webinar today really is the marriage of the user requirements for small companies and the marriage of that and the IT structure and organization of the company. It's a very important factor. And why is this important? This is very important for small companies because it's important for them to improve their operational efficiency. People spend less time looking for stuff, and it speeds up your business processes. And you want to facilitate decision making. You want to be able to access the most current and correct information, and it increases organizational value. A disorganized information with their information all over the place can kill a deal. We've seen that happen. Due diligence and data rooms need to be well designed and populated with good information to facilitate deal making. So that can be very important to small companies. And you're creating very valuable information. And this will be important later for your regulatory filings and for compliance needs, and for your technical people who want to access and understand the history in terms of what's happening within the organization. So this helps you avoid compliance issues later, patient privacy laws, health authority issues, or potentially even SEC violations. And also it creates a more satisfied workforce. Studies have shown people are happier when they're dealing with environments that are well organized and they're able to work efficiently. Nobody wants to be in a cumbersome, inefficient, time-wasting environment.
So we have had some questions come in. You can continue to send them through the Q&A on your control panel too, and we'll try to get to them in the time that we have left. So one of the questions that's a really great question, I know probably comes up a lot, is all of our people are consultants and they have their own laptops or computers. Is there something in place that can protect our data, and can you explain how that would work?
Yeah, I think we run into this quite a bit, and the whole concept of mobile device management and how we deal with that. You know, most consultants don't want a company telling them how to deal with their laptop, or they're going to give them a laptop. Some companies would rather say, okay, we're going to give you a laptop to use on our systems. Some won't, and they'll say you have to use our internal systems, or you have to get into our web-based system. That's a great way of doing it. If they have a centralized system that everybody can get to, and they can do co-authoring or sharing of documents on a centralized system that's out in a cloud environment, that's a great way for the consultants to have their own laptops or their own devices and still be able to get to the corporate data where it can be stored, it can be backed up, it can be used for disaster recovery, and that company doesn't lose out on their data going outside the organization. So those are a number of things that we work with either consulting groups or the sponsors themselves when they're tying in with those different companies.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, Jen, other than we've seen exactly what Keith has talked about. Occasionally we have clients who do want us to use their laptops for those control purposes. But the cloud-based systems and the securities, for example, that comes with Office 365 are pretty, Microsoft's done, I think, a great job of maintaining security and authentication of users on those systems. So it just depends on the philosophy of the company, I think.
Yeah, and I know, James, that we've got companies that end up going to China on a regular basis, and they have a specific laptop they'll only allow their people to go to China with because they know that, inevitably there might be, you worry about data again leaking over there, and that's one of the big things that they worry about.
Yeah, I wouldn't say just China, but yeah, absolutely.
Well, in this day and age, it could be anybody, but I know that that was one area that it's a big push.
Super. All right, thank you for that. And we have another great question here, which is one of our early consultants had a lot of information on their laptop, and they've since left the company. How do we prevent that from happening again?
So I guess I'll jump on this one again, James. This is, I think, what I mentioned MDM, the concept of mobile device management. Part of that is making sure that you're backing up data and you've identified which data is going to be for the company and which data is yours and which one is information for the consultant. Being able to have that mobile device management and be able to wipe out your data if somebody were to leave with it, those are key areas that many companies want to worry about, or maybe not, they may not think about it, but they should be thinking about it. We work hand in hand with our companies as they're putting out their devices or working with external partners and understanding how do we deal with that very same situation.
Yeah, I think from a non-technical perspective, that consultant should have been under a CDA. And so there's legal requirements that consultant needs to meet in terms of confidential information. And so I don't know the particulars of this situation, obviously, but I certainly encourage organizations to look at those, their practices in those areas and governance over their consultants and the information that they'll have access to and the expectations for that information and data when they're no longer with the organization.
Well, I can tell you a case in point for a large pharmaceutical company that we work with. They had a consultant who had been with them for years, and he ended up leaving. He was going on to another account, and all of a sudden, we saw anomalous data traffic going from one place to an IP address that happened to be that consultant, and they were pulling down lots of data that didn't belong to them. So there were legal ramifications that happened because of that, but those are things that you have to be on the lookout for. We think about lateral threat detection and different things like that, where we can look for that anomalous traffic. And most of that is a security type of thing that you have to deal with. So those are those things you may or may not think about when you're thinking about putting in an IT system.
And for small companies, their IP is all they have, right? So they weren't really want to protect it. And
Okay, and I think we have time to touch on one more question. And this one is, we shared a folder in our file sharing system, and then we found out that someone else had access into data that weren't supposed to. How can we prevent this?
So I think, Jenny, to that one, I think we mentioned a little bit earlier the concept of a governance plan, and James mentioned that people get scared by the word governance. Well, the reality is governance really is around who has access in and who doesn't have access in. How do we protect it? So it's a combination of making it open for the right people and then keeping out the ones that shouldn't get it. Part of the problem is that when people look at a lot of these web-based solutions, they make it very easy to share data, but it's also very easy to protect your data. It's very hard to protect your data at that point. It's easy to share it, but it's hard to protect it. Sometimes you actually send out a link to a folder as opposed to a file. So you wanted that person to share a file, but you shared a folder. And now they have access to all the documents in that folder. Those are that we find that quite often because people don't understand how they're using some of the tools that they have available to them. And it's not their job. They're used to being a scientist in an area and dealing with different tools. This is an area where you've got to look how do we lock this kind of stuff down and how do we most effectively use the tools that are available to us.
Super. All right. Well, I think this is going to conclude our webinar